Reminder, I'm a narrator on Chilling, the awesome horror app that features over 1,000 horror stories, over a dozen narrators, some of who you might know from YouTube, as well as full-length novels and exclusive series, and Chilling originals. You can select and change the ambient sound on the background of these stories whenever you want without affecting the story that you're listening to. And we release hours of new stories every week. Click the link in the description to download and start your free trial to see if you like it. The checkout line of the local grocery store in my hometown I left behind. I tried to keep my eyes forward and avoid eye contact as I paid for my frozen dinner and hoped to get out of Dodge before I had to talk to someone that I knew, but hadn't talked to in 15 years. "Jame," I heard a woman's voice chime from behind me. I couldn't help but utter the word, "Crap," drawing a grin from the high school-aged checkout girl. I put the smallest smile humanly possible on my face. I'm not a bad man. Here I sit, alone in the dark, in the snow, freezing to death. Well, I guess I'm not technically alone. There's a body beside me. He hasn't been any real company for a while, especially since he isn't giving off heat anymore. I really wish I would have known what was coming this morning when I woke up. I would have called in sick and spent my day snuggled under a blanket watching TV. Unfortunately, that wouldn't have worked either. There's no way my wife would have let me enjoy taking a day off. Isn't it amazing how somebody who sits around and does nothing but complain all day can magically find tons of things that I need to do anytime that I take a day off while at the same time complaining that I'm not working hard enough or bringing home enough money? I need to take a cleansing breath just thinking about it. Well, that's why I went to work today, oblivious of what was to come. When I started out in Pennsylvania with an empty truck and drove south to pick up my load of parts from the warehouse, I had no idea what was coming. The weather forecast said partly cloudy with a chance of some snow. That was the understatement of the year. I should have been a weatherman, where you don't have to be good at your job. And in fact, people expect you to suck at your job. Just stand in front of the green screen and look pretty. But anyway, I started to see some flurries about a half hour into my trip that normally took 2 hours. But today, it would be anything but normal. I got to the interstate and headed south. Before I made it to the Maryland state line, the snow was sticking to the road. It was falling harder by the minute. I slowed down when visibility became near whiteout conditions, but the idiots around me were in too much of a hurry and were having none of that slowing down stuff. It wasn't long until there was a layer of slush on the road, but did the idiots slow down? Of course not. I was doing 45 by this point and the cars were flying around me. I came to a slight turn and it happened. One of the idiots passing me lost control. His car spun in the middle of the highway going much faster than me. The slippery conditions worked in his favor because he slid off the road and into the center section of grass. Of course, by that point, you couldn't see any grass. The snow was about 6 inches deep. The only thing keeping it from getting that deep on the road was us drivers that were too stupid to pull over. I had yet to see a snowplow. It's funny because there's been other times when a big snowfall was predicted, and the plows would be out hours ahead of time putting down some liquid concoction that was supposed to melt the snow. I didn't think that stuff worked, but that's just my opinion. After the first car spun out, I slowed down even more. Driving a box truck doesn't do great for traction, but I had one of the bigger older trucks that weighed a lot. It was one of the few times that I was happy to be stuck with this jalopy of a truck. As I slowed down, the second car flew around me and spun into the grass, and then a third and then a fourth. At this point, I was wondering when these idiots would run out of luck and slide in front of another vehicle, hopefully not mine, and cause a crash that would pile us all up because nobody could stop quickly at this point. Fortunately, I think the other drivers started getting the point and they slowed down. It was just in time too because we were approaching a big hill. Any other time, like when the road wasn't covered in this slippery white stuff, the hill was enough to make me and every other truck driver downshift and try to get a running start at it. With everybody already slowing down to try and stay in the road, we didn't have a chance. The bigger trucks in front of me tried to get a little speed up to make it to the top, but halfway up, the cars in front of them had to stop because of traffic. At that point, we were all done. Once the first truck had stopped, there was no way it was going any further. At least it wasn't moving forward. A few brave or stupid souls tried to get their truck further up the hill. I put my truck in park and watched. It was like rooting for a sports team. The truck would start spinning tires, but it would be moving forward inch at a time. I held my breath as I watched, thinking the truck would get going and be able to make it to the top of the hill. It would inch forward, tires spinning, and then it would lose all traction and slide back. Over and over this played out. The truck would inch forward, wheel spinning, make it a few feet, and then slide back further than where it had started. One time, the truck slid so much that it was headed for the car behind it. That car quickly threw it into reverse to make room before it was crushed by the out-of-control metal monster sliding toward it. So as that car slammed into reverse in a desperate attempt to not become a pancake, the car behind him threw it into reverse to avoid getting hit. As this group of cars headed toward me, I knew that there was nothing I could do. I held onto the wheel and I braced for impact. Fortunately, the truck regained control and was able to stop. He didn't make any more attempts to get up the hill after that. Once everything had stopped, except for the snow, several of the truck drivers got out and met up in the middle of the road, surrounded by the parking lot of cars that used to be a highway. We stood around and drank coffee from our thermoses as the other drivers hunkered down in their cars. We chit-chatted about where we were from and where we were going, along with the obvious topic of discussion, useless weathermen. I ended up exchanging email addresses with a nice driver from Michigan who also happened to be a writer. When the conversation came to a lull, I looked around at the scenery. The snow had reached nearly a foot, making the countryside quite beautiful. We seemed to be in a large area of trees with no houses at all. I mentioned this to one of the other drivers whose name was Luke, and he said that this was a large forest that the highway had cut through. He said there was a legend of a creature that lived in this forest that would appear from time to time and take vengeance for the destruction of his home. Where was its home? I said. Right here, Luke said. When they built the highway, they destroyed several caves that were on the mountainside. They blew it up to make the path for the road. Really? I said. Yeah, I drive locally and I remember when they were building this highway, there were several workers who went missing. Did they ever find them? Well, after a long search, they found pieces of them. Are you serious? I said. Yeah, dead serious, unfortunately. It was quite a scandal. There was a group who tried to get construction shut down, but there was already too much in motion to stop. I looked around at the massive cut that had been made into the mountains so the road could go through. Progress, I said. You can't stop it. I looked at the cars and trucks surrounding me that all sat unmoving, covered in snow. Well, sometimes you can stop it, I said, waving my arms around. He nodded. Mother Nature can do whatever she wants. I looked back at the long line of vehicles that extended as far as the eye could see, and there's not much that we can do about it. I saw the flashing yellow lights of the snowplow off in the distance and felt hope rising in me, but it fell right away when I saw the plow was stuck too. People couldn't move over enough to let the plow through. Looks like we might be here for a while, I said. He followed my eyes until he caught sight of the struggling plow. Yeah, you may be right, Luke said, shaking snow off of his coat. I'm gonna go back to my truck to warm up. I'll talk to you later. Unfortunately, I'll be here, I said, shaking snow off and heading back to my truck. I hopped inside and started up to get the heater going. The man in front of me turned and looked like I was about to run him over, but I reassured him by rubbing my hands together in front of the heater vent. I looked in my lunchbox and found a sandwich, some chips, a bag of almonds, and a few mini candy bars. Not knowing how long that I would be stuck here, I decided to ration my food. I nibbled on a few almonds and I drank a little water. I knew that was one resource that would be unlimited. Filling my water bottle with snow and melting it would keep me hydrated. It was nearly 11 in the morning, on a standard day, one where tons of slippery white goo didn't fall from the sky. I would have almost been to the warehouse. I'd better call the boss and let him know what's going on, I thought, pulling out my cell phone. He answered on the third ring. Hello? Hey boss, I figured I'd call and let you know that I won't be bringing in the load of parts anytime soon. Why not? It's the strangest thing. This white stuff started falling from the sky, and when it landed in the road, it made things all slippery. Alright. Well, I'm sure it's snowing back at the base. Why would you even have to ask me that question? How far did you make it? I'm around 40 miles from the warehouse. You didn't even make it there. Well, I probably could have gone faster, but I decided that I like life. Okay, I got it. But if you're encouraging me to drive the company vehicle at unsafe speeds for conditions... I said I got it. There's no need to rub it in. When do you think you'll be getting back? At this point, there's a foot of snow on the road and the plows can't even get through. I have no idea what they're going to do. What are you going to do? Well, I figured I would call a cab and leave the truck here while I go home. What? I'm going to sit here and try to keep warm while I wait for them to plow us out. What do you think I'm going to do? I think you're going to keep giving me a hard time. Well, are you going home tonight? I'm already home, he said. As soon as the storm hit, I canceled all the runs and sent everybody home. Well, thanks for including me. I needed you to get the parts for tomorrow's run. And that worked out so well, I said sarcastically. You know what, I think I'm gonna go. Be safe, he said, and let me know when you get going. I hung up. I didn't need the heater for a while because I was still steaming from the conversation with my boss. He didn't even think to call me, I thought, because he knew that I would turn around instead of risking my life going and getting his precious parts. The thought lingered for a while as I leaned my head against the headrest and took a little nap. When I woke, the chill in the air made me start the truck to get warm again. I looked out over the endless throng of cars and trucks that were covered in snow with exhaust rising from their tailpipes. I looked at my watch. It was 4:37 in the afternoon. The sun would be going down soon, and the temperature would drop. At least the snow had let up. It was only basically flurrying now. While the truck was on, I plugged in my cell phone to charge. I didn't want to be without it in case I needed it. I closed my eyes again, not intending to fall asleep. When I opened them, it was dark. I sat up straight and panicked for a moment, thinking that I had fallen asleep at the wheel. In reality, I had, but the truck wasn't moving, so it wasn't as bad if I had been driving. I noticed taillights here and there where people were leaving them on, or if they were automatic. It lit up the mountain like a Christmas tree. It would have been quite beautiful if we weren't trapped in this prison of snow. I finished with my reverie and stretched in my seat. I was about to get out to go to the bathroom when I looked at the time. It was 9:40 at night. I looked at my phone and noticed that I had several voicemails. I didn't remember turning off the ringer, but I must have. I turned it back on and then typed in the password and listened to the first one. "Daddy, where are you?" It came Carolyn's voice. "Please come home. Please call me. The next 5 messages were the same thing, each one growing in desperation. I sighed and called home. It didn't even ring once until Caroline answered. Daddy, where are you? Why aren't you home? When are you coming home? Well there, Pumpkin, I said. I'm okay, just stuck in traffic. Well, how long will you be stuck? I don't know, there's a lot of other people stuck in the same traffic as me. Why? Because of the snow. But it's not snowing here. Well, it's not snowing here either. Well then how can you be stuck? I'll explain when I get home, I said. Is Mommy around? Yes. Well, what is she doing? She's drinking stuff I'm not allowed to drink. Great. Let me talk to her. I love you, Pumpkin. I love you too. Here's Mommy. What do you want? She slurred. You to stop drinking would be nice. Hey, don't judge me. Where the heck are you anyway? What do you care? You've got your good friend Jack to keep you company. Don't get lost. If you made more money, I wouldn't have to stay at home and drink. Or you could get off your lazy butt and go get a job, and that would help out a lot. She hung up. I banged my head against the headrest. Once I stopped thinking about the wreck my life had become, I realized that I hadn't gone to the bathroom since this morning. I felt the urge come on quickly. I grabbed my phone and headed out into the white wilderness. The door was on its way shut when I whipped around and grabbed it. I reached in and took the keys out of the ignition and then locked the door. I made it 2 steps before I remembered. I unlocked and got back in the truck, reaching over to the glove compartment and grabbing a handful of napkins. I relocked the door and headed out. The taillights were few and far between now, but they still gave this horrible situation a festive glow. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and started toward the side of the road. The snow was up to my knees and I had to trudge through to make a path to the closest trees. Once there, I squatted and let nature take its course. I tried to use as few napkins as possible to wipe, not knowing how many more times I would have to do this before we were rescued. As I followed my trail back toward the truck, I noticed a car a few spaces in front of my truck with its door hanging open. At first, I mentally shrugged, thinking that they had left the door open to find their way back to their car. But then I saw that the car was still running. I decided to investigate. I approached the car and saw that it was empty. There were tracks leaving the car and heading into the woods. They weren't the same as I had made during my trek to the woods. The snow was much more disturbed. It almost looked like somebody had crawled through the snow. Why would they do that? I thought. As I looked more closely at the path, I saw spots of red. I shone my light on them and they reminded me of blood. I turned my light towards the woods and saw a clear path into the tree line. And then a horrible thought hit me. They weren't crawling. They were being dragged. I trudged over to Luke's truck and banged on his door. After a minute, I saw his head appear in the window. "Oh, what the?" he said, wiping the sleep from his eyes. "I need your help," I said. Something about the way that I said it seemed to squash any objections that he may have had. Give me a minute," he said and disappeared into his truck. He soon reappeared and climbed down out of it. "Okay, you got me up. What's so important? Are the plows working their way up to us?" I looked back, realizing that I hadn't even thought about the plows and being rescued. I glanced back and saw the yellow flashing lights, but they were still miles away and moving at a snail's pace. No, I got up to take a bathroom break, and when I came back, I discovered something. I led him over to the car with the open door. "I found it like this," I said. "So, someone got up to take a piss. What's the big deal?" I leaned down and shined my light on the red spots. He leaned down and examined them. "Interesting, but not conclusive," he said. "Well, look at the path. What does that look like to you?" "It looks like somebody went into the trees. But look at my path walking into the trees," I said, shining my light towards the path. He turned on the light from his own phone and pointed it at the paths one at a time. "There is a difference. What's your point?" he said. "I think somebody was dragged into the woods." "But why?" he said, shooting me a curious look. "I don't know." He looked from me to the paths, to the woods and back again. "What are you thinking?" he said. I shrugged. "Maybe somebody needs help." "And who do you think is going to help them?" Luke said, eyeing me dubiously. I looked at him and smiled. "Oh no," he said. "You're not dragging me into the forest in the middle of the night in knee-deep snow." "But what if somebody's really hurt? What if they've been attacked?" "All the more reason not to go." "You're kidding me, right?" "Look, man, I don't know you," he said. "I only met you today. How do I know you didn't drag somebody off as an excuse to get me out of the woods alone and do terrible things?" "Why would I do that?" "I have no idea. You're the psycho killer. How would I know how your twisted mind works?" "Come on," I said, giving him my most innocent look. "Do you hear the things that you're saying?" He looked from me to the trail to the car and then back to the plows. "All right, give me a sec, I'll go. But if you try anything, I'll kill you and leave you to die in the snow." I chuckled. "You'll kill me and then leave me to die." "Shut up," he said with a smile. "You know what I mean." "No, not really." "Okay, if we're doing this, I need to go back to my truck first." "Why?" "You'll see." He disappeared and returned a few minutes later, wearing a day-glow vest and carrying a large flashlight, along with a baseball bat that had been sawed off partway up, making it around a foot shorter than a regular bat. "What's that?" I said. "My deterrent." "Deterrent against what?" He shrugged. "Theft, attack, property damage, you name it." I looked at my phone and realized that I had no deterrent. The thought suddenly struck me. I'm going into the woods alone with this person that I've just met, and he has a weapon. I have no idea if he dragged somebody off into the woods and killed them. "Maybe we should get somebody else to go along with us," I said. He looked around. "Like who?" he said. "You want to go around and wake everybody up, form a posse and storm the woods for somebody who might have just had a nosebleed as they were heading out to take a dump." "Well, when you put it like that," I said, feeling stupid. "Let's go," he said, pointing his flashlight towards the trail. We trudged through the snow following the trail. I strode through the untouched, knee-deep snow beside the path, so as not to disturb what might be evidence. I turned around and saw that he was walking right through the middle of the path. I stopped and stared at him. "What are you doing?" I said. "What? It's easier this way," he said. "A lot better than trudging through that deep stuff." I sighed and hung my head, and then I stepped into the path just like him. After a short time, I thought to myself, this is much easier, but I'm not telling him that. The wind picked up and started throwing snow around, making my protest moot and sending chills through me. We walked until we got to the tree line, and I paused and waited for him. "Why'd you stop?" he said. "You've got the light. Why don't you go first?" "Because this is your little investigation. I was asleep in my truck when you dragged me out of here. But you've got the brighter light," I said. He grabbed my phone and replaced it with the big flashlight. "Happy now?" "No," I thought. I stepped into the trees, flashing the light all around. The snow wasn't as deep because of the trees, making walking easier. The wind wasn't as strong under the trees either. After doing a quick look around, I refocused on the path. It still seemed like somebody was being dragged in a straight line, avoiding trees. There was a definite destination someone or something had in mind. That hadn't put my mind at ease. In fact, it made me nervous, which made me paranoid. Even though I kept the light aimed at the path, I found my eyes darting to the sides quite often in case something was about to attack. It never crossed my mind until now that we were heading right where it wanted its other victim. Essentially, we were delivering the next 2 courses of its meal, like we were door dashing ourselves right to it. I paused for a moment and pretended to warm myself by rubbing my arms to hide the fact that I was shaking, and it had nothing to do with the weather. "Why don't you lead for a..." I turned to say, but he was gone. I shone the flashlight all around but found no sign of him. I backtracked on the path but saw no footprints other than my own. My mind flew in 1,000 directions. Where is he? Did whatever dragged the other person out here take him too? What do I do? Do I retrace my path back to the truck and sit there like nothing happened? And then I remembered. He has my phone. Panic grabbed me and dragged me down into despair. I spun around seeing nothing but trees and snow. I wasn't sure which way I had come and which way I was going. At that point, all I wanted to do was go back to the truck. I looked at the path and mentally flipped a coin to decide which way to go. Once I started out again, I kept glancing to the sides for anyone trying to sneak up on me. The trees seemed to go on forever. Several times I felt that I had made the wrong choice and decided to turn back. But I had dragged my friend out here and I had to find him. My feet were freezing even though I wore boots, and they weren't hunting boots and weren't suited for long treks in deep snow. Just as I was about to give up, the trees opened into a clearing and I saw the cave. The wind had picked up, but the trail was still visible for where somebody had been dragged. The path led right into the mouth of the cave. I froze on the spot. I had found what I was looking for, but now all I felt like doing was turning and running full speed away from it. My survival instinct had a serious discussion with my conscience about the benefits of self-preservation versus honor. In the end, self-preservation pulled out the big gun. Reason. I'm a truck driver, I thought. I'm not a hunter, a cop, or a survivalist. I turned to start back when I heard something. I paused and listened. It was coming from the cave. It was a song. As I listened, I realized exactly what it was. It was Metallica's All Nightmare Long, my ringtone. My mind slowly put two and two together. Luke has my phone and I hear my phone in the cave. Therefore, Luke is in the cave. And if he's in the cave, it's probably not on his own free will. I slunk back into the cover of trees to work out a plan. Get the heck out of there was the first plan my mind came up with, followed closely by, get the heck out of here right now and don't look back. I wish that I would have listened to either of those plans. What I eventually settled on was, sneak around to the side of the entrance and try to see what's inside without being seen. That was the plan, however my mind was a little fuzzy in the details of how to accomplish that. I went back into the trees about 10 yards and then followed the tree line for 30 yards or so. After that, I carefully creeped out of the trees, making sure my or Luke's flashlight was off, and snuck over to the mouth of the cave. The wind had died down and the sky was clear. There was enough of a moon reflecting off the snow to allow me to see where I was going without the flashlight. I crept up to the edge of the cave opening. My heart was beating out of my chest with every step that I took closer to the cave. I froze when I heard movement inside. I backed away as quickly and quietly as possible, and then tried to become part of the hillside. Mere moments later, something big and white lumbered out of the cave. My mind fought against the reality of what my eyes were seeing. It was big. Bigger than a man and covered in long white fur. It walked upright, swinging its massive arms with claws at the end. I stood frozen in terror that the monster might spot me. I didn't breathe until it had disappeared into the trees. I crept into the cave, slowly peeking around the corner in case there was something else horrible in there. But what I found was amazing. There was a roaring fire going in the middle of the cave. I completely forgot where I was and stepped right up to it, holding out my frozen hands. The warmth felt so good that I took off my coat to bask in the heat. My feet screamed to be next. I sat beside the fire and took my boots off, holding my stocking feet up to the flames, nearly crying as they thawed. I closed my eyes and enjoyed being warm for the first time since we had started the search. When I opened my eyes, I looked around the cave and really wished that I hadn't. The resident of the cave had a certain, let's say, decorating style. The walls were splashed with red, and in the corner were human heads, each one dangling from their own hair. There were wind chimes made of bones, and in the corner was a large patch of pink hanging from a tree branch that had been stuck into the wall of the cave. As mortified as I was drawn to the pink thing hanging in the corner. I approached it slowly and put my hand out. The smell was horrific. It was like a backed-up sewage plant on a hot summer day. I gingerly touched the surface of it and recoiled immediately. It was human skin. I saw holes where arms and legs would go in. The monster was making its own human suit. After gawking at the macabre decorations, I remembered why I was here. My phone. I searched all over, eventually finding it in the pocket of a very recently dead body. Poor Luke, I thought, looking at the dismembered body. I wish I hadn't dragged him along in this stupid investigation. In fact, I wish I wouldn't have dragged me along in this stupid investigation. Should have left it to the police. I looked at my phone with a new revelation. I dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency?
A woman's voice answered. I'm in a cave in the forest and there are a lot of bodies here, I said. The monster who killed them could be back at any moment. I need police and emergency services.
Sir, prank calls to emergency services are a chargeable offense.
It's not a prank call. I need help out here as soon as possible.
Even if I believed you, all my units are tied up right now with the weather emergency. In case you haven't noticed, we've had a significant snowfall in the last 24 hours.
I know. My truck is stuck at mile marker 145, I said. I came out here to the woods to investigate somebody being dragged out of their car. The phone was ripped out of my hand and flung across the cave, where it landed and the screen went dark. I looked up and there stood the creature. Somehow it had snuck back into the cave while I was distracted with my ultimately futile phone call. I heard a low growl as it bared its fangs and flexed its claws. A yellow river ran down my leg as my mind went into pure panic mode. I knew that I was about to die horribly. I backed away slowly as it pursued me, matching me step for step. I backed myself into the corner where the heads hung in their grisly display. As I prepared to die, I had a moment of clarity. I reached up and pulled down one of the heads. The creature stopped and watched as I stared deeply into the eyes of this formerly living being. And then I reached back and threw it at the creature with every ounce of strength that I possessed. The head hit him square in the shoulder and he stumbled back in surprise. I didn't give him the luxury of recovering. I grabbed another head and threw it, and then another and another. Each one hit him in the torso and caused him to retreat another step. Finally, my aim was true and the thrown head connected with his. He seemed dazed for a moment, as I reached for another head and realized that I had run out of my ammunition. I reached down and pulled two femurs loose from my body, and ran at the creature, swinging my clubs and connecting. At first, I hit a leg and then an arm, and finally the head. Once I was close enough to hit his head, that's all that I aimed for. Hearing satisfying cracks of bone on bone drove me into a frenzy. I swung like a madman. The creature tried to swipe at me. It slashed my arm and my chest, but I didn't care. I was in a berserker rage, fighting for my life. I knew that if I stopped or even paused, it would all be over. Blow after blow landed, staggering him backward. I never thought of where we were going, just fought like a wild man. The creature stumbled on a rock and fell backwards into the fire. I watched as the scene seemed to unfold in slow motion. His arms pinwheeled as he lost his balance and his back landed on the burning wood. He laid there for a moment, looking like he was unable to move, and then he sucked in a massive gulp of air, and unleashed the loudest scream that I had ever heard. Even if I hadn't been fighting for my life, the scream would have chilled me to the bone. He rolled off the fire and half ran, half limped out of the cave. I followed him out, watching as the trail of smoke disappeared into the distance. I went back inside and stared at the warm, inviting fire that had saved my life. I knew that it would be so easy to sit beside it and stay nice and toasty. I also knew that eventually the creature would return to his cave, and this time he wouldn't be caught off guard. I knew the only way to survive was to try to find my way back to my truck. I put my boots back on and immediately wished that I hadn't. They hadn't been close enough to the fire to really warm up. My feet were freezing from moment one. My jacket was like wearing a blanket of ice as well. I looked over at Luke's headless body, and I was filled with regret for getting him into this mess. I owed it to him to take him away from this place so that that thing wouldn't be able to defile his body anymore. I leaned down and hefted him onto my shoulder. I was glad that he was smaller than me, or I wouldn't have made it too far. I started toward the trees, hoping to pick up the path that we had used to get here. Partway through, I did find the path, but it seemed to lead to the left. The last thing that I wanted to do was get lost and give that monster a chance to ambush me. I had been carrying Luke for around a half hour. I was exhausted and the adrenaline crash from fighting off a monster had left me drained. I collapsed into the snow as Luke's body flopped off my shoulders. I didn't have the energy to get up. I was freezing to death. Luke's body was no help. It had already gone cold. So, this was where I sat. And if my story had ended there, it would have been bad. But thankfully it didn't. I resisted the urge to fall asleep. I sat and looked at the trees thinking maybe they would give or tell me what to do. But the trees didn't say anything. But as I sat there, I heard something. It was off in the distance, but it was loud. I stood, finding myself drawn to the sound. Knowing that I could barely stand, let alone carry Luke, I left his body there. I stumbled forward, guided by the sound. A few minutes later, I stood at the edge of the trees and looked as cars and trucks flew by on the interstate. I nearly cried. I walked to the berm of the road and looked right. There, maybe 50 feet away, sat my truck. Behind it was a state truck with its hazard lights on. I walked up and knocked on the door of the state truck. The driver looked out at me and nearly choked on the sandwich that he was eating. "What the heck happened to you?" he said, looking at my blood-soaked clothes. "It's a long story," I said. He called for police and an ambulance, and when they got there, I explained the situation repeatedly. When the cop looked like he wanted to arrest me, I explained about calling 911 from the cave. They kept me there in an ambulance, so at least I was warm while the cops searched for Luke's body in the cave. They found both by retracing my steps. Once the police were satisfied, the ambulance took me to the hospital. They checked my wounds and they patched me up, and then admitted me for observation. I used the hospital phone to call home to a panic-stricken Carolyn and a belligerent wife. I told them that I would be home in the morning. Carolyn was ecstatic. My wife was ambivalent. Next, I called the boss and told him where the truck had been towed to. I also told him where he could stick his job, and I hung up. I had just settled in to watch a show and fall asleep when my phone rang. "Hello?"
Well, aren't you just the hero?
The voice said. My spine turned to ice. "Luke?"
Good guess.
"But how?"
You haven't figured it out yet. Maybe I should wait and see if you can put the pieces together.
"You were behind me and then you disappeared."
Good so far.
"I thought maybe you would turn back until I saw your body in the cave."
Nope.
He said.
Wrong guess.
"But you were beheaded."
Wrong again. So that leaves only...
"You were the monster," I said softly.
Ding, 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 we have a winner.
He said. Why?
Why, you ask?
He said as he snorted.
Because people are the animals. Look at us. All we do is run around like rats in a maze trying to get ahead, while barely eking out enough of a living to feed our families. That's not living.
And what you do is, I said, grinding my teeth, you slaughter people for fun.
I'm alive. When I become the creature, I'm free.
No, you're captive to your sick desires, I said. He chuckled.
Then so are you.
What do you mean?
You saw how many heads were on the walls, over a dozen, and yet not one of them fought with the ferocity, the sheer rage that you did. Face it, you're like me.
I'm nothing like you, I said quietly.
Oh, I disagree. I think you're more like me than you would like to admit. I think it would only take a little nudge to push you out of the light and into the darkness.
I'll never be like you.
What if I told you someone you loved was going to die tonight?
The phone disconnected. Luke! I screamed into the phone but was only answered with a busy signal. I slammed the phone down and ripped the IV out of my arm. What are you doing? A nurse said as she walked into the room. Leaving, I said, getting out of bed and dressing. You're bleeding. Well, then give me a Band-Aid, I said, putting on my shoes. You can't leave, she said, holding my arms, trying to guide me back to bed. I glared death into her eyes. She backed away and left the room. I put on my shirt and jacket and then I walked out. I was met at the door by a security guard. Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to go back to your room and get back into bed, he said. Why, am I under arrest? Well, no, sir. Then how can you detain me? Uncertainty blossomed in his eyes. I'm leaving, I said. My family is in danger. If you want to call the cops, then send them to my home address, but get out of my way. He hesitated for a moment and then stepped aside. I stopped at a courtesy phone and made a quick call and then went outside. The snow from the previous day was piled up at the edges of the parking lot, making them look like miniature mountains. Out of one of the mountains stepped Luke. His face was bruised and he walked with a slight limp as he came towards me. I slipped my hand around to the back of my waistband and he paused. Did you bring a little something for me? He said. You want to find out? He chuckled. Maybe later. So here we are again. What should we talk about this time? How about when you became insane? Toot toot. You shouldn't label people. I'm not, I said. You're not a person. I find the irony in the fact that you were building a human costume. He narrowed his eyes at me. It's not a costume. I just wonder, I said, ignoring him. What happens when it's done? Will you then make another bigger monster costume to wear on top of it? I told you that it isn't a costume. He screamed, taking a step towards me. I readjusted my grip behind me, causing him to stop. That's right, little caveman. I can end you at any time. He blinked and his eyes flicked from utter rage to nonchalance. You know it's illegal to carry a handgun across state lines without a permit, he said. It's only illegal if you get caught. Sirens pierced the night air as red and blue lights flashed. Well, aren't you clever, keeping me busy while the police arrive? He said, turning. Don't, I said, holding my hand behind my back. He smiled. I'll say hi to your family while you talk to the cops. And then he disappeared. I ran back inside the hospital and called home.
Hello?
Carolyn said, Honey, you need to put Mommy on the phone.
Daddy, when are you coming home?
Soon, Pumpkin, soon, but I need to talk to your mom.
Okay, here she is. What?
She said, groggily. You need to take Carolyn and go to your mother's house, I said. There was a slight pause.
It's 2:30 in the morning.
She growled. It is? I don't even know.
You want me to go to my mother's house at 2:30 in the frickin' morning? Why? So she can tell me how worthless I am too. Oh, I'll get right on that.
No, listen, you're in danger. The phone disconnected. No! I screamed as I slammed the phone down and then picked it up again to call home.
Hello?
Carolyn, I said. Listen, there's something I need you to do for me.
Okay, Daddy.
There's a man coming to the house. He's a friend of mine and we're playing a little game.
Ooh, what kind of game?
Hide and seek.
Is he looking for you?
No, actually, he's looking for you and Mommy.
Why?
That's just the way that we play this game.
Okay.
I need you to go find the best hiding place that you have. The one where nobody will ever find you and you don't come out until I get there.
How will I know it's you?
I'll whistle your favorite song.
Okay.
Now, it might be a while until I get there, but I want you to go hide now.
What about Mommy?
I tried to tell Mommy, but she doesn't want to play.
Well, maybe I should ask her.
No, Pumpkin, you just hide. I'll take care of Mommy.
Okay, Daddy.
You should go to the bathroom and get yourself some water and snacks because you might be hiding for a while.
Okay, Daddy.
That's my awesome girl. I love you very much.
I love you too, Daddy.
Don't forget, Mommy isn't playing. So if she calls for you or comes looking for you, don't come out until you hear me whistling your favorite song.
That'll be easy. Mommy never comes looking for me.
I sighed and stifled a tear. Okay, Pumpkin, I better get going so we can play the game.
What happens if he finds me before you do?
My breath caught in my throat. Then we lose, I said quietly.
We want to win, don't we?
We most definitely want to win.
Okay, I'll see you later.
The phone disconnected. I hope so, I thought. 3 squad cars pulled up to the front of the hospital, sirens blaring, lights flashing. They ran inside the hospital and locked eyes on me. Freeze, the first cop said, pointing his gun at me. I put my hands up. I'm the one who called you, I said as the cop searched me and found no weapon. What are you talking about? He said, more than a little annoyed. You heard about them finding all the bones and body parts in the cave out by the interstate. The cop narrowed his eyes. That hasn't been released to the public yet, he said quietly, looking around for anybody who might be within earshot. Well, I was there. I was in the cave, I said. So why aren't you upstairs in bed? He said. I had heard that you had been injured. Because the murderer called me and said that he was going after my family, thinking that I was laying helpless in a hospital bed. My God. Yeah, that's why I called you, I said. I need to get home before he gets there. Let's go then, he said, starting toward the door. Where's your house? Well, in Pennsylvania. He stopped and turned on me. You realize this is Maryland, right? I know, I was driving a delivery truck when I got stuck in the snowstorm. I can't do anything in another state, he said. Can you at least drive me there? He hesitated. I don't know. My wife and 8-year-old daughter's lives are at stake. He stepped over to the other cops and spoke quietly to them. After a moment they left and he stepped over to me. I can take you, but I won't be able to intervene in any way, he said. That's fine as long as I get there. Let's go, he said, heading for the door. He turned his lights on and drove like a madman for 58 miles. When we were almost there, he slowed down and turned off the lights. We pulled up to the house and I looked at the unusual lights that were on. How's it look? He said. I scanned the house slowly and found nothing amiss. It looks like it should, I said, getting out and starting toward the driveway. Do you want me to call local law enforcement? I paused and considered it. I'll wait until I check out the house, I said. Thanks for everything. That's it, he said. This man is dangerous and I don't want you to get hurt too. I appreciate everything you've done, which is why I'm telling you to leave. He sighed and stretched out his hand. Good luck, he said, as I shook it and stepped toward the house. I walked slowly up to the front door, looking for anything out of the ordinary. Finding nothing, I tried the door. It was unlocked. That made the hairs stand on the back of my neck. I knew that he was there. I tried to look as nonchalant as possible. I sighed and went upstairs to the bedroom, trying to look like I was just tired. I expected an attack with each step that I took. Every step that I wasn't attacked made me that much more paranoid. Until I made it to the bedroom, I was a basket case. My mind was running 1,000,000 miles an hour. On the outside, I was doing my best to look like it was a normal day coming home from work. As soon as I made it to the bedroom, I went for the gun in my wife's bedstand drawer, the one that she thought I didn't know about. When I opened the drawer, it was gone. I double-checked the false bottom, but there was no gun. I went to my hidden lockbox and got my gun, loaded it, and felt a little better after checking the rest of the house. I stalked slowly from room to room, watching every corner that I turned, leading with my gun, waiting for the inevitable. I opened every closet, checked every window, and then went downstairs and did the same thing. Once the top 2 floors were cleared, I went to the basement. I opened the door and turned on the light. The stairs were uninviting, and every creak of every step that I descended made me flinch. I made it to the bottom without incident except for a near mental breakdown. The unfinished basement had a musty smell that reminded me of death and decay. I searched the main room and then went to the furnace room. There was only a single light hanging from a wire in each of the rooms. When I got to the furnace room, it was small due to the furnace and tanks that inhabited it, but it also casted a myriad of shadows. There were plenty of hiding places in here. Beads of sweat formed on my forehead, and knowing that this was the last place in the house to be searched, I knew that he had to be in here waiting for me. My grip on the pistol was so tight that my knuckles had turned white and the sweat made it slippery. I was half afraid that it would slip out of my hand if I fired. I slowly checked each shadow and hiding place, each one making me more anxious for the next. It came down to the last spot. Beside the furnace was a shadowy area. I gripped the gun even more tightly and jumped toward the dark spot, aiming my gun in the middle of the shadow. Nothing happened. No one attacked me. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw that the space was empty. I faced a harsh reality. He's not here, I said to myself, but neither are Cheryl or Carolyn. I turned and started back towards the stairs when the phone rang. I rushed up the stairs, nearly tripping and falling into the hard wooden boards. I made it to the kitchen, breathing hard, and I answered the phone. Hello? The dreadful chuckle told me all I needed to know.
Was I there?
Luke said. You son of a...
Temper. Calm down or you won't get to talk to that certain special someone.
Where are they?
They? I only have one. Did I miss someone?
I mentally cursed myself for being so sloppy, but I tried to recover quickly. I forgot. Carolyn is staying over at a friend's house.
Oh, really?
He said, as I hoped he believed it.
Well, I suppose I can go find her later.
You leave her alone, I screamed.
Oh my, that is a sore spot. I'll definitely have to find her. In the meantime, perhaps you would like to talk to your darling wife.
There was a rustling sound, and then Cheryl's voice came on.
What's happening? Who is this person, and why did he take me?
Calm down. Everything's gonna be okay.
Are you nuts?
She squealed.
I'm being held hostage by some sicko. You don't even know where we are, and you're saying it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to say to keep you from freaking out and making everything worse.
A near miss on that one,
she said. How about try and stay calm and don't give him any reason to hurt you?
That sounds a little closer to believable.
The phone rustled and Luke came back on the line.
This is the conversation you have with the person that you may never see alive again. I could probably look up a good marriage counselor for you too.
Or you could tell me what you want and quit jerking around.
Well, what fun would that be?
So I'm just supposed to sit here and wait for you to come get me?
I'm sure there would be several officers waiting for me if I returned to your house.
Quit stalling, I said. What do you want?
I want you to retrieve your daughter from her friend's house. If that's where she is, and bring her to me. I think we should all sit down to dinner together.
Never happen.
Well, then I'll kill your wife now in the most painful and interesting way possible, and then continue to hunt you and your daughter.
I gritted my teeth so hard that I was sure he could hear it. Looks like I have no choice.
Excellent. Then I will call back in 1 hour with a location and you will bring yourself and your daughter.
The line disconnected before I could say something that I might have regretted. I slammed the phone down and rushed around the house whistling the theme to The Little Mermaid. As I went from floor to floor, my whistling became louder and more frantic. She has to be here, I thought. If he had her, he would have gloated about it. My desperation grew by the moment and I heard a rustling in the attic. I grabbed the rope in the upstairs hallway and pulled down the attic stairs. Slowly I went up and looked around. In the back corner, I saw a large chest that was bouncing around on its own. I rushed over and ripped the lid open to find Carolyn. "Did we win, Daddy?" she said with a smile. "Yes, sweetie, we won," I said, squeezing her in a big hug. "But now he wants a rematch." "What does that mean?" "It means he didn't like losing and he wants to play again." "Oh, good. I've thought of a better place to hide." She scampered toward the steps and was halfway down them when I called out to her. "Carolyn, don't hide just yet." I caught up with her and we descended to the upstairs hallway. "He wants us to play on his turf this time," I said. "What's turf?" "It means we have to play somewhere that he wants." "Well, okay, where?" I ruffled her dark hair and smiled. "Wherever it is, I'm sure you'll do great." We went downstairs and headed for the door. "You should probably use the bathroom before we go. It might be a long trip." "Okay," she said, and she skipped away. I watched her go, wishing that I had nearly as much enthusiasm for what was to come. 10 minutes later, we were in the car and I wasn't obeying any speed limit signs. "Why are you driving so fast? We need to get there quickly. Is Mommy playing this time?" I hesitated. "Yeah, she is." "Oh, good. She can have fun with us too," she said, smiling. "I think Mommy might already be having fun," I said with a stone face. "That's not fair," she said, pouting. "Why couldn't she wait for us?" I chuckled in spite of myself. Just then, the phone rang. "Hello," I said.
"Let me talk to the little girl,"
Luke said. "Why?"
"to make sure that you have her and aren't pulling some trick."
"No." He paused. Cheryl screamed.
"Would you like to try again?"
I put the phone on speaker. "There, she can hear you now."
"Hello, Carolyn,"
he said. "Hello," she said cheerfully.
"Are you coming to visit your mommy and me?"
"Yeah, we're on our way now," she said as I tried to wave her off. I grabbed the phone. "We're losing you," I said. "You're cutting." I hung up the phone. "Pumpkin," I said, barely containing my emotions. "You can't tell him things like that." "Why not?" I thought for a long moment. "Because it's against the rules. If he knows where we are, it gives him an unfair advantage." "What does that mean?" "It's like he's cheating because we're helping him." Just then the phone rang. "Hello?" I said.
"We both know your phone didn't lose reception. Put the little girl back on."
"No," he sighed. And then after a long moment, Cheryl screamed again.
"How long do I have to keep this up?"
he said. "If you want to talk to her, you'll have to wait. Now tell me where to go."
"All right,"
he said.
"I can wait a little longer."
He rattled off an address and I hung up the phone. "What happened?" Carolyn said. "Oh, nothing, Pumpkin. He just told me where we're going to play." "Oh, good," she said, bouncing in her seat. "I can't wait." I focused on the road and kept the tears from escaping my eyes as they welled up. 15 minutes later, we stopped in front of a familiar house. "I don't understand. Why are we here?" "Come with me," I said, getting out of the car and walking up to the front porch. The door opened before we arrived and out stepped a middle-aged woman. "Grandma," Carolyn said, hugging her. "Are you playing too?" "Playing what, dear?" she said, looking from Carolyn to me. "Listen, Pumpkin," I said, holding her hand. "That man that I was talking about, he's a bad man. If he would have found you, he would have hurt you." "But you said he has Mommy. Is he hurting her?" I paused for a long moment as Cheryl's mother shot me a look of concern. "I hope not, sweetie." "Let me go with you. Let me help you," Carolyn said. You can't, baby, I said, gently holding her hands. The best thing you can do is stay here with Grandma and be safe. But what about you? She said. How will I know that you're safe? My words were choked out when Carolyn wrapped her arms around my neck in a massive hug and squeezed so tight that I saw